What's going on, everybody? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional, and this is our 14th episode NYP Talk Show. We have the occult science specialist right here, Terrane Hicks. Thank you for coming out this evening. I really appreciate you, brother. I've known you for a long, long time. We're going to just briefly go over that history and then go into today's show. So I met Terrane when he was really young. I don't even know what age you were. You were probably a teenager or something like that. And I met the brother Terrane through Harlem Go Jew. And from there, we were, training outside of Harlem Go Jew, and we built a relationship off of karate. And he went his own way, brother Terrane, and took his own path and became you give him the title. I don't want to make a mistake on your title, brother.
The best title I could use is I became a mystic and a sorcerer. So that's the title we could use. But I like your introduction.
No problem, man. That's deep. So he's been a martial artist his whole life practically. Football star at one point in high school. So he has great discipline and a lot of talent. And I just knew whatever he got his hands on, it was going to be successful anyway. And he's created a life from being a explain your title again. I'm sorry.
Mystic and a sorcerer.
Mystic,
a magician.
A magician. So not magic in a sense where I'm pulling something out my hat and then there's a surprise for you, but a deeper esoteric science, real science. All right. And
spot on.
Right. So now let's go into the history of what a mystic and a sorcerer is. Does it have anything to do with being a shaman or shaman?
Damn, it's a good question. I see you with these questions. So, does a mystic and a sorcerer have anything to do with being a shaman? So, a shaman is someone who can tap into the celestial realm, right? Alternate dimensions, primarily for the purpose of healing, right? A mystic is one who goes out of bounds, right? They go higher than the classified priests or the contemporary priests. The mystic is one who is kind of like endlessly searching. They have no designated path, right? The shaman has a path, right? The shaman usually is within a well-cultivated art, and they are serving a purpose, and their specialty is one healing, but also going into alternate dimensions to get to the root of spiritual disease most of the time, right? So some may say that the mystic can go farther than the shaman because uh, they are endlessly searching, and that requires a lot of willpower and a lot of courage. The shaman is very talented, but still has limitations because the shaman would be confined to a culture. Yeah. So slightly different things. Both categories of people can go into the outer realms, though. Right. So when you read literature of shamans and you read literature of mystics, they both acknowledge each other, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So it's a respect, mutual
Yeah.
respect. Okay.
Right.
Cool. So being that you're a mystic, and you also stated sorcerer. Now, sorcerer over the years, from what I've heard, has always been there was like a negative connotation to uh, um, uh, um, attached to a sorcerer. A sorcerer is someone who's playing magic tricks and putting the dark spells on people, if you will, or even on the world. So what's in certain schools of thought, sorcerers manipulate what's going on the planet with human beings and yada yada yada.
Okay.
The conspiracies regarding
So,
sorcerers. So when you say sorcerer, what do you mean exactly that you are one?
all right. So I want to confront the major element behind the major institution behind the miscategorization and the misinformation about what an actual sorcerer is, and that would be the notorious Roman Catholic Church,
Ooh,
right? And yo, it's so deep, right? Because I seen Brother Sharif break down some things on your podcast, right?
yeah.
As far as um the misinformation, right? A sorcerer is someone who practices magic, right? Um, Magick, known in the West, right? Um, in other cultures, we have different names for what we call sorcery. And in all indigenous cultures, there were people who were talented enough to go into spiritual art form of sorcery and magic, right? Hollywood, the Roman Catholic Church, and the Western interpretation of spiritual understanding would classify anyone who was into manipulating elements, uh, primarily earth elements, as evil. But in indigenous cultures all over the world, there were people that were trained, they had a certain talent, they had a certain DNA to get into a art form of sorcery. So I'm one of them people that is into the arts, right? What we would call it in the West would be best known as the dark arts.
Got you. Got you. Got it. All right. All right. I like that. Great answer. I hope y'all got that at home. Uh Kind of demystify these false rumors and conspiracy theories. All right.
Hmm.
Now the history of I'm going to start off with voodoo. The reason why is because I know a little bit about voodoo based on what
Hmm.
I've studied over the years through Professor James Smalls and some of what Bobby Hemmett, pardon me, your screen went off a little bit.
Okay,
Um, um,
Bobby
some,
Hemmett.
some of what Bobby Hemmett, it's
Hmm.
funny I said Bobby Hemmett. I don't know how that went off like that. But anyway, Bobby Hemmett and Professor James Small. So Professor James Small, the way he breaks it down, he says voodoo is pretty much a practice and it's a culture that people of Africa uh, practiced for many years before religion even existed.
Hmm.
So the way
Hmm.
he explained it, he says that voodoo is older than actual religion itself.
Hmm. Yep.
Okay. And it connects the man, human being, to nature through
Hmm.
practices of like rituals with like uh natural elements
Elements.
natural elements.
Hmm.
So how do you see voodoo and the different types of occult sciences? If you could kind of like break down, you got voodoo, witchcraft,
Yep.
and
Okay.
others.
So that's spot on. So the first, before I even start, I wanna give great reverence to the elder Professor James Smalls, right? And that is spot on, right? So pretty much in what the West would call primitive living, right? So our great ancestors were in jungle environments, right? And in immersed in these jungle environments, we have any of us who have taken an initiation into a jungle art form, right? One of the Vodun cults or voodoo or indigenous uh, spirituality from the root. We have an understanding that our ancestors were uh, obsessed with uh, the dead,
Mm.
right? Our ancestors were obsessed with the cohabitation with spirits. They were obsessed with ancestry. They were obsessed with the dead so much that I'll give you an example. If a close loved one of yours died back in those jungle days, every weekend you probably would have to prepare a meal for her, like she was still alive. Her or him, like that person was still alive. And this obsession um, led to the what the West called primitive people have a psychology and an obsession with the dead, right? We're constantly thinking about the dead 10,000 years ago,
Does
right?
that have any correlation to necromancy?
Oh, absolutely, right? So anything with necro, necro, is dead, right? And yes, our ancestors were obsessed with necromancy, right? So the same way, so sometimes we got to paint a picture. The same way we are obsessed with social media, look at our obsession with social media.
Yeah.
That is our ancient ancestors in the jungle, right? There's no computer technology.
Hmm.
That is their obsession with the dead. So as much as we're on social media, they are thinking about the dead
Mm.
immensely, right? But remember, I said we were in the jungle days. There's no concrete. It's nothing but woods and trees and animals. There's a lot. There's a higher concentration of spirit activity, right? There's
Okay.
a
I don't mean to cut you off. We do have viewers that disagree with the word spirit. So
okay.
I would like for you to hold your train of thought if you can remember what you were getting ready to say.
I got you.
But we got a sidebar spirit. So when you talk spirit, do you mean spook? Do you mean ghost? What do you mean by spirit?
That's a very good question. That can get so complex. But let's say um there's so many categories of spirits, right? You got ancestral spirits, right? Right? And in African science are known as egun, egun. And those those are classified as people who walk the planet and they no longer are living, right? But then you have other, right? The trees have spirits, right? The trees have energies that have an embodiment that can
Okay.
communicate.
Okay. So for people who may be skeptics
Mhm.
and wanting to disagree immediately because the words you're using,
Mhm.
and they're not really listening to what you're saying. This energy and spirit, right? When we talk about energy, we're talking about the etheric waves that come out of things, from inside and out of things, right? Are you talking about that? Like, for instance, like heat. You can't see heat. You can see heat if, if it was cold outside, you can see kind of like heat around a person. So are you talking about like energy in that regard, or are you talking about etheric energy? What
I
Explain that.
like your question. Oh man, I'm going to definitely go on this podcast more. I am talking about beings that breathe, feel, think, not necessarily always in human form. That's what I'm talking about when I say spirit, right? Heat, fire, earth, air, we classify that as element.
Right.
I am talking about within the tree, there may be a being that exists, but it's not linear how that thing may exist.
Okay. So it's not the way like human beings would categorize it in their own minds and personal reality.
Not how we would categorize it in Western understanding.
Yeah.
No. Yep.
Okay. So I'm open minded. Okay. Uh,
Yep.
Now, can you go into your explanation of these spirits?
So to go deeper into the explanation of the spirits, um, our ancestors of the very deep jungles had nothing else to entertain themselves with, um, but their what's the word? Talking to Westerners, psychic sensitivity was enhanced because there's no computers, right?
Right.
It's just the elements. The elements speak. The elements have so much activity that I give you an example, right? If you're in the jungle for 30 days, right? Say you were lost in the jungles in Mexico. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to lose your mind. The next thing that's going to happen is that you're going to be communicating with things because there's nothing else in the human world for you to communicate with. And then
Uh,
the next thing that is going to happen is that all of the energies that live within the forest that are not human are going to speak directly to you, right? You are
I
completely
want to
outside
add
of
that
your
you
mind.
did say you lost your mind before that happened.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let's get into that. Let's go.
So
Mhm.
losing your mind, right? So that
Yep.
what came to mind was like, okay, so if you're a person who wants to be, disagreeable and not look at
Yep.
things from a neutral standpoint, you would say, you lost your mind. That was it. That's why you saw all of that stuff. But if you want to see things from a neutral standpoint, you'll say, okay, it's like a person who lost one of their let's say lost one of their five senses. The other four senses are going to be stronger now because you have only four senses to survive, to lean on. Just like
Okay.
if just like a person who has a handicap, they'll lose their one of their limbs. The other limbs are like super strong, right?
Yep.
So if my whole point is you're in the jungle, you lose your mind, and then from that point, there's something opens up in your brain that
Mhm.
you weren't able to access at one point.
There's no way to get into this level of spiritual degree without losing an, a very strong aspect of your mind or tangible reality. There's no way you can be so present in science, right? To where this will make even an ounce of sense. A lot of people that get into what I'm into, they had a form of very extreme trauma,
Mm.
and that trauma was not carried out in depression. Other senses were opened up,
Mm.
right?
So are you saying that you went through something to get you to this state, meaning like through rituals, through rites of passage?
We ain't going to my life story yet, but I'm not going to say everything right now, but I grew up in Harlem, New York,
Okay.
right? And I was in a gang. And one of the things of trauma that occurred with me was I lost a lot of loved ones very early, right? And in my environment, I lost people back to back to back to back to back. And that was one of the things that absolutely pushed me over the edge, right? So I do have to say that. Um, trauma is relevant, right? Um, a lot of people get into spirituality because
What you're saying.
or high level of spirituality because trauma led them there. They couldn't deal with anything else, so they decided some sort of spiritual route.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that because I did notice I do notice that a lot of people from the different schools of thought, when you really get to know them, they've been through a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
They've been through a lot of
Right.
stuff. But let's go back to the trauma. So you're basically saying trauma led you there. Where I was going was the trauma opened up something in your mind to open you up to the occult sciences.
Absolutely, because occult science have. I'm gonna be real, right? Occult science have a level of insanity attached to it,
Mm.
right? Some of us are can go out there. For some of us, it's safe for us to go out there. Some of us, it's not that wise, right?
Mhm.
But some of us can go way outside of our mind, right? And a lot of us can be classified a level of crazy. Absolutely. The occult is for people who are not necessarily sane.
Okay, by Western standards.
Oh, absolutely. If it's by Western standards, you crazy.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about so we spoke about the history of Vodun and other let's say occult practices. One region would be from Africa. What part of Africa? Will we say Nigeria, and what other countries in Africa Vodun would come from, or the different types of occult sciences?
So voodoo is strictly African,
Mm,
right?
gotcha.
Vodun cults strictly African, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got the north, you got the south, you got the east, you got the west. All all four regions have an aspect of voodoo or vodun.
Mm-hmm.
Voodoo is more of the, I'm going to say, accepted or uh, um, contemporary forms of the cultures, and Vodun is more of the dark side or the non-contemporary cultures, right? The
Okay.
South is dealing with the more non-contemporary because of uh, politics, and also the what you call that, the phenotype of the Africans there, which is more muscular, more aggressive, and the north side is dealing with more of the contemporary because the muscular type is more slim.
Okay. 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 So north and south, east and west, phenotype or uh metabolism, muscle structure. The south was more aggressive, muscular,
Mm.
maybe even short, uh
More warriors. Yes.
more
Mm.
warrior like.
More
So
warrior like.
so being that it's of the south, would you say the south is more dark magic
Absolutely. Yes.
and the south is more of what?
Palo Mayombe, right? Which everyone may have an understanding as dark arts,
Okay. So
right? More,
they're both dark.
yes,
They're both dark.
yes.
Okay, okay. All right. All right. So Paulo Mayombe and
Or, or
mhm,
what we call the Mayombe science.
the
Mhm.
Mayombe science. Okay,
Yes.
so the north was more Paulo Mayombe, and then the south was
No,
more
no. The South is more Mayombe science.
science.
Yeah.
Mayombe
The
science is the
South.
south, and then the north is more Paulo
The North is more Yoruba
Europe.
science
All
or
right.
Yoruba understanding,
All right. Perfect. So
right? So you got Nigeria in the north, we got Angola of the south. One is a little bit more dark. One is a little bit more what we people may consider light.
okay. Okay. And then so we have Yoruba on the north, and on the south we have Paulo Mayombe.
Um, Generally speaking, but if you said that, you would be very accurate. Yes,
Okay.
because we're talking about a continent.
Yes, sir.
So there's a lot of things going on, but we're talking about magic or uh, indigenous spiritual science.
Okay, got you. Now, I don't want to keep going on, with that, the intelligence that brother Sharif Bey was talking about, and what you're talking about, considering what is like this spiritual realm, which people from some certain schools of thought consider spooky. Um, but I'm open, like I said, and I would like to hear what brothers have to say regarding that intelligence that we only tap into during uh fight or flight situations, or intuition, or um uh we access that inner intelligence that we access that through meditation as well,
Mhm.
that spirit energy, if you will. I would like to go deeper into that at some point. Um,
Okay.
not today, but on another podcast, because that's a deep understanding. And it's a long podcast on that. But let's go into. So you already spoke on the different countries. Let's talk about the religions and the religions that adopted voodoo, or occult practices, if you know of any.
Well, the first, um, I'm going to use culprit. That is absolutely the, the Roman Catholic uh organization, right? So they burning incense and blood sacrifices, and that is strictly African.
Hmm.
Nothing ritualistic coming out of the Roman Catholic Church and all of its ideologies. And when I say all of its ideologies, each and every form of Christian is under the Roman Catholic Church, and they are under the Nicene Creed. Any ritual you do, it is very easy to trace it back to an African origin, and it is even more easy to trace it back to an Islamic origin.
Hmm.
And that is the what I'm talking about is are absolute facts,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Mhm.
So you're saying the Roman Catholic Church and anything under that adopted voodoo rituals and practices
Absolutely,
from Africa.
directly from Africa.
Okay. Now we could I like that you said that. Um and eventually we got to expound on that and like, come up show improve like reference through references and things of that nature, books or what have you. But being that we only have an hour, let's just go into the next thing. So Bobby Hemmett, I want to talk about Bobby Hemmett, and I see you as the new Bobby Hemmett. I don't want to put you, I don't want to put his name on top of yours because you are your own man. You took a whole nother, a different path. However, Bobby Hemmett doesn't, or I would say no longer serves the community as he used to, and there is a gap, right? There's a void that he once filled, and he's no longer doing it as much. So I feel that you would be the best person to be his you know continuation, you
I
know.
don't know, man. I yeah, I remember. I mean, this what you brought up is so deep because me and you watched Bobby Hemming videos when we were like, when, I think what was I 19, 18?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's deep because if he pulled back for the reasons people say he pulled back, I would definitely understand. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I want to feel that void in totality, but I got a lot of respect for Bobby Hemmett because he was just speaking from the heart. And I feel like he put his life on the line energetically and for black people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? After he had a stroke, he said, I did this for black people. That's what he said when he got interviewed right after he had a stroke. Um, I mean, Bobby Hemmett is the GOAT,
Yeah.
right? We got the GOAT in sports. I don't know if y'all want to say LeBron or
Go,
Jordan or whatever, but like
go.
in occult science, in black occult science, Bobby Hemmett is the GOAT.
Bobby Hemmett
We
was
we
Hemmett,
we gonna say we gonna stay on that one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Bobby Hemmett is definitely the GOAT.
Hmm.
However, uh, at the same time, you would be you're really young, right? So you're
I'm
like
I'm
early
34.
you're 30, you're 34.
Right.
understand? There's so much time you have, even though people, you may not want to necessarily fulfill the Bobby Hemmett shoes, right? Or fill the Bobby Hemmett shoes, as big as it is, as you get bigger, people are going to start to compare the teachings,
I'm having a very hard time right now with dealing with the masses, or what you would call in the I got culture, the 85ers,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm having a hard time, and people like yourself, if you're like keep going, y'all all lend some real inspiration to me, but I have been stung by the masses left and right. And in the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said that the masses or the people are unstable and ungrateful. So I'm having a hard time with that right now. 34. I'm letting y'all know. Yo,
See,
Mikey, what's up, sir?
what's up, Terrane? What's
Yo,
good?
where you come from?
What happened?
Yo, I'm rocking with my man Mikey, right? He dealing with my Haitian brother dealing with the voodoo culture, dealing with the low eyes. Yeah, I had to shout my brother out.
Peace,
But
bro.
yo, peace. But you know, it was so deep with what Sharif Bey was talking about, right? Because I've been burned by the masses. But when I'm burned by the masses, it's the Prophet Noble Drew Ali who says that the people are unstable and ungrateful. And I'm like, that's the only thing that actually have me not totally quit,
Mhm.
is the understanding that the people are unstable and ungrateful. And because the thing with Bobby Hemmett, it looked like he got burnt out,
I agree with you.
right? Bobby Hemmett was, listen, when people
Blame.
compare me, people always trying to compare me to Bobby Hemmett. I don't like being compared to Bobby Hemmett, because Bobby Hemmett can do a lecture for 8 hours straight. Yeah, I would watch a Bobby Hemmett lecture, go to sleep, wake back up, and he'd still be talking.
Mhm.
But at what expense is this worth in what we call the occult, or uh, uh, underground spiritual culture? You know what I'm saying? So thanks for giving me that comparison, because I heard that, but I got a lot of respect for Bobby Hemmett.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, let's go into the different archetypes that help uh Vodun or practitioners of occult practitioners access energy within themselves in the universe. So I want to talk about that, like Shango and the different orishas, and
Mhm.
what do these orishas do for the person, for the practitioner,
Okay.
from a scientifical standpoint?
All right. So one, um, the Orishas, are, that is a practice dealing primarily with um, a practice called Ifa, right? The Loa are dealing with practice uh, of Haitian voodoo. Your question complicates someone like me, because I love your question, but the question is Western, because the Western mind automatically puts uh, arch- archetypes or archetypes into the scientific understanding, right? If I put it into a more African understanding, or indigenous understanding, we have chemicals of living, breathing energies all over the world, and those energies, if they are what we call primordial energies, they all have components within us.
That's a fact. You're talking about dealing with
Right?
the universe.
Right. These are
Elements.
elements,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if we were on another side of the globe, we will understand. If you know, there's certain people in the West who know the periodic table. We have that in spiritual understanding, but it is not the Western's periodic table. So if you say Shango or Oya or Ochun or Papa Legba or Uzuli Freda,
Mm-hmm.
the Westerners need to understand that they have to take their time to acquaint themselves with the science. I'm not saying to know the science, but the Westerner will take their time and go to school and learn the periodic table, but they will look at spiritual science from Africans and they will go, this is similar to this is this, and that's not how this works. So what do?
Boom.
Us who are initiated, right, and the people who develop the science, or the vanguards of the science, we go, a word, we will just hide the science because you are showing us that you're not open. When you show us you're not open, you are a hazard. We already had a hazard. We already had a catastrophe with the European.
Exactly.
So a lot of us think that we have a science or sciences of indigenous science or African science that is lost. It's not lost. It's just we hide in it because we experienced a catastrophe. We have science, but anyone truly initiated into true African science now knows that the same thing that the Freemasons know. Listen, you reveal our science, we cutting your head off, right? We snatching your tongue out, right? The reason people believe that, oh, there's a lost science out there is because none of us are revealing it, right? And that is because the Western mind does this shit. The Western mind goes, oh, you have something. How can I capitalize off of this?
Exactly.
And this, right? It looks like we lost hip hop as Black people in America. It looks like we lost this, and this. We can't afford to lose some of our very sacred sciences. So what we will do, we won't say nothing. Secrecy, right? Right? That degree where you doing this, right? The silence degree,
From
right?
mouth to ear.
And we've been dealing with that for a minute, where people they're looking in books for some of our sacred practices, and we're like, nah, B, we not selling this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So we can back all of our spiritual science with all of our spiritual practice with science. However, it's very dangerous at this point for indigenous people at the state we are in, because capitalism is at an all-time high, and we got strong vulnerability to sellouts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a fact. Yeah,
So
you're right.
so the archetypes, so the archetypes, you're saying that the Western mind would go, this is the science, this is what the archetype is, and it may compare to this in Western science, but the two don't go. And
Not at all.
and and and,
Yes.
and people get it misconstrued and they misunderstand, and they try to find a way to capitalize of it anyway.
Absolutely. And that confirms our movement to not reveal it. It confirms our movement to have anyone who was in that approach to have them further confused.
You see that a lot online now. A lot of people who are not properly vetted, who didn't go through their certain rights, they're initiating people remotely online
Exactly.
without like vetting them, because you have to go through rites of passage. Whoever
Right.
like in Ifa,
Mhm.
Santeria, they usually have your godparents who have to properly vet you in order to,
Right.
take on that responsibility. Do you
Okay.
understand?
So
Mhm.
so what
Yes.
so this is why I wanted to do a series of these, because I just like you to just build with us right now. However, we got to pinpoint at some point, what are the different archetypes? Are you saying that you don't really want to go too far in depth with the
Ar-
archetypes
ar-
because of the
archetypes of what?
archetypes of let's say, for instance, you spoke about the southern region of Africa, which was I think you said Palo. No, you
The
said it
Mayombe science.
Mayombe science.
That's one region. However, you got when it comes to that region, you got hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds. So
Yes.
you're not about to just bust out hundred a hundred archetypes right now on the podcast right now.
But the fact that I'm letting everyone know that we have hundreds should be eye opening how complex these art forms actually are.
Mhm.
So I want you to shoot all your questions because the people will have a more clearer understanding.
Yes, sir.
To, to
Now,
sum it up to what she's saying as far as archetypes, when he's talking about, like, to the question earlier, as far as different deities, all these deities again deal with the elements of the universe. Like a Shango will be a fire. Like in Voodoo, we have certain gods that deal with fire, certain laws that deal with the elements, and everything, as he was saying earlier, is connected within you. Because they always tell you in the Voodoo ceremony, when one goes into the mode of being mounted, or the spirit is riding their back, that's you connecting with your higher power. Basically, it taps into you. It's in your DNA. It's in your lineage. Like my family, I was born here. Out of all my siblings, I'm the one that deal with these things. For some reason, it just happened out of all my siblings. That's something my mom questioned. So it's in the DNA. And understanding it, as he was saying, is to sit down with somebody, it's going to take you ages to understand where they're coming from. But once you get the elements, understanding the basics of the four elements, what you deal with, it's about using that energy. The word eternally is manipulating that energy around you to get the results that you want. And it's always based on your intentions. That's pretty much it. That's why I had it.
I got a question for you, Ron.
okay.
Would you attempt to become a chemist now if it would guarantee to make you $1 million a year?
Of course.
Okay. That's how complex this is. It can make you $1 million a year. You see, your boy is retired, but it is a science. Science, according to all those regions that it existed in, and some of the people of those regions mingled and combined them. They never sold it out. One thing with our people is that we sell shit out, right? Primarily like hip hop, right? That's like the stake of that's the stake of African American culture. It's the only actual thing we have. When we see things like that, it's like, nah, hide this shit because we sell shit. This can't if this is sold, right? If what Mikey is talking about is sold,
Mhm.
we're done.
It is.
Okay. All right. That's something else to go deep into. I can go so many directions with the things you say. But like I said, this is like the warm up, and but we got to go into depth with a lot said here today. Let's go into the different forms of meditation and yours in particular, because what I've noticed is that you meditation is like the cornerstone of your practice.
It's dope.
All right. Meditation is the cornerstone of a lot of my consistency, I may say, because in order to get into very, very what the West may consider dark arts,
Mhm.
right? And what indigenous people may say as dangerous arts, you cannot make mistakes. If you can't make mistakes, do you have to have a regiment of a strong regiment of consistency where there is the clearing of the mind, uh, breathing, very strict, good diet,
Mhm.
objective diet, and focus. Right. Remember this. These arts are capable of bringing someone into the insane asylum. Right. So it's like I can dabble into this, but if I do it wrong, I can absolutely completely lose my mind. So regiment is important, right? Um, say for instance, I meditate and I see something and I snap and I dial 911. That EMT is definitely going to follow protocol and put me into the crazy house. Now I'm in the crazy house. Now I got to get out of there. If I'm going to get into these arts, I have to prevent myself from going into that place, because if I go into the insane asylum, I'm going to be induced with pills that spiritually may put me into a deeper prison. And I might not be out of there in 10 years.
Okay, so you're saying people could lose themselves, uh, basically have it almost like an out of body experience and lose themselves mentally, their mind. Their mind is kind
Oh,
of like
Yes.
absolutely.
stuck in like the in
They
darkness.
they will see entities, genies, clowns. They will see things that may freak them out because they don't have an understanding of what they have gotten into.
That's a
And
fact.
the
To add
minute
on to
that happens, if you tell that to a psychiatrist or a
Mhm.
psychologist in the West, it's a wrap. You
They go crazy.
crazy.
That happened with Aleister Crowley's work. People who have read his books, certain incantations they do in meditations, they say they have gone mad.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I was reading that book, the Necro book,
The
Aleister Crowley?
Necronomicon.
Necronomicon, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
They had you going.
It makes you
I'm
like, I don't
Cause,
know how to explain it. It's like
'cause
it kind of the repetition of, like, how you were telling me to write it down.
yeah.
the repetition of just like looking at the words that are spelled out, and it's like goes into your subconscious mind so deeply. And like there were certain points where I was finding myself like I would find myself like in a trance.
It does that to
Yeah,
you.
I
The
want
book
to say
of
something
law.
to that though. I want to say something to that.
Mhm.
One of the only reasons you probably didn't lose your mind is because of the katas, right? So I would not initiate anyone to these arts unless they did one full form of martial arts and obtained a black belt.
Mm.
That is the standard, and that's probably why it's not probably, but it's absolutely why I ain't lose my mind. Well, I probably lost my mind a couple of times. That's probably why I'm not in the insane asylum
Mhm.
today. It's the martial arts. It's the training. It's the mental fortitude, right? Which we are losing m- more now than ever because of things like Twitter and Twitch.
Mhm.
Can
Because
I
we
add
have
something
because
before we go any further?
Mhm.
It was a while back. Terrane and I used to share information. He gave me a meditation one time, and I was doing it. And when I was telling him what I seen, I'm like, "Were you doing something the other night?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Ah." I remember I told you what I saw when I was saying that thing you sent me. I'm like, "T,
Mhm.
I seen this whole color red thing," and he's like, "Oh, so you got there?" I'm like, "Yeah, bro. I see what you're talking about." I forgot what it was. It was for probably can't recall. Was it the Jira
Kalima
stuff? And the Jira stuff.
or Jira stuff? Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, and I
remember
was doing
that.
the meditation the whole time. I
Mhm.
called you because I was drawing it, as you said. I was like,
Yes. Hmm.
and I
Well,
let me fall
to
back.
get back to the meditations, you have yogi practices, you
Hmm.
have uh you know oh my god, Buddhist practices,
Mhm.
Okay.
and are there any other types of meditation practices that you may know of, or that what meditation practice you guys or your culture does for the most part?
I do a lot of things. So that's a very hard question, but I want to speak about the yogi thing, right? So the yogi in 1999, if you Google yogi, most people did not know what that was. But if they did, if they understood the word yogi, well, Yogi, they knew that this may have been someone who can hold their breath for 24 hours or something crazy like that, right?
Hold it
So,
for 24 hours.
yo, Wim
Jeez.
Hof, right? Wim Hof. Wim Hof is your contemporary classification of what may be what people consider a yogi, right? Um, the yogi, if that was a yogi that was performing arts for the public, they would lock themselves. They probably put handcuffs on, and they would probably put themselves in a box with water. In 3 days later, they're probably, after going into meditation, submerged underwater. They probably would surface up 3 days, and you'll be like, yogi was a strong word.
Mhm.
The word yogi was not the word of someone who practiced yoga, because yoga is what Americans know as yoga is not what yoga is. It's not an exercise art. It's a what we know as yoga as the exercise art is what we call rishi isometrics.
Mm.
So the people of the Himalayas that can meditate in the mountains for 40 years straight, and not come down from the mountains. They had this a version of isometrics that was specific to the Himalayas, and we call that Rishi, RISHI, isometrics, and that those isometric exercises is what the West knows as yoga,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Now, these yogis, that's a strong word. That's somebody who can dive into the bottom of the ocean, hold their breath for a very long time, come up and be like, that was nothing. Because they pushed their DNA to the limit to evolve their DNA, right? So, from what we call rishis, right, masters, some of them were born masters, some of them cultivated themselves to become masters. We have a great deal of respect for anyone known as the rishis. And the rishis were known for two things, really: breathing and meditation. Nothing more, nothing less. Breathing and meditation. Breathing and meditation. And the style of karate that we were very involved in, bro, was that goju, and that dealt heavily with the breathing, right? And a lot of what we are, what we may be adept in, was with the breathing art. Those yogis were masters of that, right? Breathing was key, meditation, right? And so the yogis are masters of two things only: breathing and meditation. But breathing and meditation was an art, and the breathing was an art that we call pranayama, Prayanama. And according to yogic philosophy, all you need is pranayama. One of the reasons that we are so adept in how we understand things is because our martial art had a intensity of the influence of breathing, right? So you asked me about, oh, what's your meditative practice, right? As far as meditative practice, it would absolutely include what I'm talking about as the pranayama, but my meditative practice would include the perfection of sound, right? The thing with sound,
Frequency.
I'm going to try not to be long-winded here, but sound, it's one thing I love about sound, right? Cinnamon can be it can be very good for you. Lemon, you can name any herb. It can be very, 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 very good for you. However, the digestion process takes energy and it drains energy. And if too much of it can create an ailment, and that's where we come with the thing of too much of anything is not good. Sound has none of that, because sound has no digestion process. So, Ron Brown LMT, if you chant an Om 100,000 times, or 1,000 times, or 100 times, it will have no defect to you. If you chanted anything in high vibration in what maybe the West would consider excess. It can have no defect to you because it's sound. It processes right through. Smell, food, like I said, herbs, sounds goes right in. It doesn't have a process that wastes energy. And I'm letting y'all know one of the biggest reasons why our ancestors are like this is because they're trying to figure out how to put some of these mantras, incantations, and sounds into a bottle so they can sell it. That's all I got to say.
Okay.
You said meditation, right? I want to add something. I know there's different techniques, something called the mudras.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just picked a book up about that. That's a technique that's used also with the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, I have another question. However, you know, I don't like. There's so much to ask. You need about maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours because we went in a few different directions. Um, I would like for us to come back, do this again, and go deeper into these questions. Uh, because like I wanted to go into the psychology of your practice, like the psychology behind what you do.
Do you want to talk about aspects of that now?
What's going on, everybody out there? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional. You have just watched another episode of NYP Talk Show, A New Yorker's Perspective. Be sure to share, like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. We are on our way to 500 subscribers. The goal is 1,000 subscribers. Click on that subscribe button so you're getting the new videos, new information each week. Help us get to that 1,000 subscribers. We would greatly appreciate it. Peace.